Hey friends, today we're going to learn about our first Python framework, and it's not going to be Django, it's going to be Flask. Flask is easier to learn, and you're going to like how we're going to be building these blocks that will eventually lead us to Django. Let's get started. So we made a very simple project. It's one page really for today, and if you're going to build it from scratch, which you don't have to because I already have the code for you, but if you're going to do it, this is how you do it. You'd start by doing touch app.py, which creates our main file that we're going to use, the only file for this lesson. I already have it up. It looks like this. You can open up with your favorite code editor. I'm using Visual Studio. And here it is. It's very, very simple. We're importing Flask, as we're used to doing with the same syntax we have described before. We are initiating the Flask app by passing it a name, but you can see we haven't defined it because it comes with a default name. Now that default name is main. That means that this condition is going to run. But before we get there, let's see what's happening on line 5. After we make the app, we have to define our first route, and we use a decorator to do that. If you're used to a framework like Express in JavaScript, you'd be finding that routes are kind of similar, different syntax, but you're associating a route to a function. And here we're doing the same thing with decorators. We're saying the route of home, let's say, is going to have this home function, and we're defining it right here. Of course, we're simply returning a string, and we're going to make it more complicated over time. And then this block on line 9 says, if the name is main, which it is by default, then run the app on debug mode. So that's what we're going to do. First, we're going to install the package. If you don't have it, I'm using pip3. You can use pip install, but this would be the command. That's it. And you can run the app like so. Now we can see that it's starting on debug mode. It's giving us the IP and the port we should connect to. And it's also giving us a debugger pin, which we'll get into later, but it's an interesting technique to be able to debug your code in a secure way. Here we take what we were given, paste it, and we get that simple string back. It's very, very, very easy, in my opinion, compared to other frameworks like Express. Doesn't take a lot of code. It took a few lines of code to get this going. Now we can expand a little more. So let's say that we don't want to return a single string. And of course, we know we can do some logic here before we return that string, but instead, we want to return an HTML page, a fairly common thing to do. Eventually, we're actually going to make an API, so we're going to leave the HTML and the GUI in general to the front end, most likely using Next.js or React.js. But that's different. Right now, we're going to focus just on the back end, and a very simple one at that. So we need something more. If we want to make an HTML page, we need to import something extra. And that is the render template from Flask itself. All you need to do is add a comma and append it to the import. Now that we have that, instead of returning the string, we can do something like this. Render template, and we give it the file name. So we're going to say hello.html. Let's say that we don't need this line anymore. That we really we're going to double down, and we're going to see if this works right away. Okay, so now we need to make that hello.html file. But before we do that, we need to make the templates folder, because I suppose that's the one piece of magic that Flask is using. It has a convention that says, okay, all your HTML files, your UI has to go in a specific folder. So let's make that. Made a folder called templates, and within it, a file called hello. Okay, I will open up that file and put some basic boilerplate HTML. I guess we have something like that. We'll do a body. If you know what you're doing, you can expand on this, but this is just to show you that we can use our own template. Hey there. Okay, so that's an h1 tag inside the body, inside the HTML tag. Hello.html lives inside templates, and we reference that like so. Let's see if that works. Kill the app. start it again. Hey, that's it. So next we're going to learn how to use a little bit of CSS to make this page nicer, but then we're going to abstract it, like I said, put the UI somewhere else and focus on the API part of this project. I think you're really going to like this. It's a very, very simple way to get into Python and get into API implementations. I'm here with you the whole way. Okay? Let's do this together. I'll see you soon.